2, 1. And we should be live. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Get the Mic. This is episode 4. I'm your host, Owl, on the left.
And I'm your real host, Brok, over here on the right.
Real host. Oh, I see. I see what we're doing nowadays.
Yeah, I mean we're both real hosts. I'm just saying.
Sure. You are indeed a real host.
Yeah, I'm A and the real host.
So anyway, this is, and if you want to pull it up,
yes.
be beneficial. So this is episode 4. We should be covering Oolong, the kidnapping monster, and possibly Yamcha.
Yamcha.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yamcha.
Yamcha.
The desert bandit. And just so everyone's aware, this is Get the Mic, the podcast where we talk about the mythological meaning behind fiction. And the first thing we're examining is, in fact, a very mythological tale called Dragonball.
Yes, Dragon Ball seems to be a very complex amalgamation of many different mythologies and archetypal heroes. And as we delve into it, we are able to sort of untangle them and figure out the ideas behind aspects of the characters, what they're doing, why they're doing it, and ultimately, the motive behind the story that you're seeing. So hopefully we can get to the bottom of it this time. I think that Owl has a pretty good idea of it. Probably better than me, but I've been thinking on it. I think I have a little bit to say.
So if you like what you hear, make sure to smash the like button.
Just crush it.
Cringing right now. You can't see it, but I'm cringing. My owl feathers are ruffling up.
Oh, I'm scrunging.
You're scrunging.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, scrunge.
That's the face you make.
We did not talk about
scrunge.
All right, so there's some addendums we need to mention first. We did not talk about scrunge.
We didn't talk about the scrunge. I mean, the scrunge master, Lord of the Scrunge.
We will get a when the
story intermission title card.
Well, when the story refocuses to that point.
Yeah.
Because the intermission title card only happens.
It'll be there.
We will talk about scrunge. Anything else we'd missed from last episode?
Did we miss anything from it? I don't think we did.
No. You listened back to it, so
I did listen back to it. There were a couple of things that I thought of. I should have written them down, but I was just kind of passing thoughts while I was working, so I can't recall them. But I think as we talk about this next episode, they'll probably come to me.
Fair. And the last episode was about the Keentone, the flying nimbus of Master Roshi.
Ah, yes. Flying on the cloud to collect
Brock
the stars.
Thought we would get through pretty quick, be able to get to Oolong pretty quick.
Okay, yeah. I can admit to being wrong. And it's looking like I'm still wrong.
Because we'll see how long it takes.
We'll see how much more wrong.
We will.
On
we'll
today's
see.
Episode.
Yes, on today's episode. So let's get into it. If there's nothing else that you have to say about the last episode, some format things that we need to implement.
Sure. Where do you want to start?
Well, we were saying that you were trying to introduce this idea of you offering your analysis and then me offering my analysis in that order. It wasn't as simple as that.
Oh, like a recap?
Yeah, you were saying like a recap, yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Do we want to
Summarization-
include that?
Well, I just kind of floated the idea of putting together a summarization or something like it.
Okay.
Just I don't know. It takes us a while to arrive at a point, and we arrive at a lot of different points as we kind of get through the episode. I think it would be valuable to try to condense it to something more salient, but I think that would take time. It'd be difficult to do on the fly.
Oh, okay.
So that was
I
the
didn't know if
suggestion.
that's what you meant. I didn't know exactly what you meant. But let's go ahead and get into it. So, the first thing we're going to be talking about is the Dragon Balls. So, we might stay on this image for a little while, to be honest.
So do you want to go into Dragon Balls as a concept?
Well, I want to go into the particular reason why I grabbed this frame. And as you can see, it is the illumination of Goku here. And this is the 3-star ball. So it's worthy to note that not only are you enlightened by the knowledge and wisdom of your ancestors, but you are enlightened as well by the mystical elements of other people. And this is
And
Bluma's
the
Dragon
unknown.
Ball. And the unknown, right.
Yes.
And so that is something that you don't know, right? The customs and things of other people. So,
Right.
but more
It
of what we're saying
represents
here, right?
It represents wisdom and it represents enlightenment. So I think enlightenment is probably the closest you could get to representing it with one word. It's sort of the Dragon Ball isn't a Dragon Ball. The Dragon Ball represents the journey it took to get to the Dragon Ball. Right.
Well, okay. Under that analysis, what would you say then is the purpose of having the Dragon Balls be useless unless subsumed together?
Because all of those journeys need to be completed. And all of the chaos that you can conceive needs to be turned into order to create the ultimate dream and confront the Leviathan or the Dragon of Chaos to create the ultimate order out of the ultimate chaos, right? So it's a unification ultimately in all of mind, body, and soul. That's how I interpret it.
See, I slightly disagree. I don't know that each Dragon Ball represents the journey. I think that each Dragon Ball, in a vacuum, let's say, right, is like, it's almost like a bead of chaos. First of all, they're placed unknowingly, right? And throughout this entire arc, we only know one at a time where they are. But what I want to get to, and I guess we should actually save that for whenever the dragon actually arrives. But as far as right now, right, we don't have that analysis of the dragon, so I don't really want to include that yet. If you understand why.
That's fair.
Right now, the brilliance of this Dragon Ball, the illumination of Goku in this sense, is simply from the exploration he's going through, which is kind of what you're saying about the journey.
Well,
I don't think the culmination of it.
I think you're imagining a more primal version then of what I'm saying, right?
Well,
A more
what distinction I want to make is what you were saying about the journeys all need to come together. That's the part that I have a sticking point with. Most of what you said I agree with.
Sure.
But the illumination of Goku here, this is just when Goku had picked up the ball, and I'll do a little summary since I remember distinctly what happens in this point. Bluma is trying to keep up with Goku on the Kintone, and he's going pretty fast because he knows exactly how he should orient himself. And so, in trying to chase him, she misses and, let's say, is willfully ignorant of an obstacle in her way. She catapults herself over it and kind of crashes. When she crashes, the Dragon Ball falls out, and Goku can then interact with one of these pieces, right? And that's the thing. The Dragon Balls themselves are very complex. It may be the most complex idea in the show, to be honest. I mean, I think about...
Is it original?
Well, yeah, I think so, because when I think about...
I mean, really original?
Wishes. Think about things in well, I don't know how much mythology and history you can rely on here, but like... So genies... Right. Genies in lore would grant wishes to their power, and they were like bound to certain items. Okay. Now, we will see a genie later on in this show, but more importantly, I just want to emphasize the wish granting idea. Right, because we've heard that. We don't necessarily have to talk about the dragon, but we can talk about the wishing, which is important. The wishing on these stars, let's say, and what is that? Well, what is the star?
The star is an elevated view of the horizon. The star is the good half of chaos. Let's say, where I don't want to say just good, but it's
I don't know if it's a
elevated
good
view
half
of chaos. Whereas, so think of stars and ocean, right?
Mm-hmm.
So upward, stars, elevated view of chaos. Downward, ocean, downward view of chaos.
I don't know if it's an elevated view of chaos, though. It seems orderly and pristine. Don't you agree? Looking up at the... Yes.
Orderly?
There's an order to it.
I mean,
think about
order.
Like atoms. Like those are arranged in a particular order. Everything revolves gravitationally around certain objects. There is order there. Whereas,
I guess in that sense, yeah, I just hadn't associated it that way.
I think the light that comes from the stars is what makes
enlightened
them be that
order.
Enlightened, right? And that's why it's important that the stars are on the balls.
So this is like creating ultimate order.
Yes,
to instantiate a dream.
Right, but we'll get to
sure.
We'll get to that. But the fragments themselves, and like we've talked about the ancestral idea behind the 4-star Dragon Ball, which is introduced with the first Dragon Ball we've ever seen. Now, stars, astronomy, there have been civilizations in the past that have geared towards that idea of their ancestors being in the stars. It is a closely related celestial thing, right? To have your ancestors transcend the human realm and become part of the cosmos. Now this, Goku is getting an intonation because in this scene, what he's doing is the Dragon Ball is glowing because it's near another Dragon Ball. And that's another thing that we can talk about is how the Dragon Balls glow when they're near each other. So So what's happening there, let's say, when they glow when they're near each other, is that the more accumulation of enlightened thought that you can gain will breed more of that. It will attract more of that same intonation. It's a lot of the idea that to those who have everything, more will be given.
It's the compounding thing.
Right, it's the compounding thing.
Like, if you are in the space that is favorable, it will become more favorable. Or if you are becoming enlightened, you'll become that much more enlightened for the enlightenment.
Right, but I don't think that... I don't know how accurate it is to say that the Dragon Balls symbolize the journey.
What I meant in that is that, like, in a narrative sense, if we're going to describe the meaning of the 3-star ball, per se, right? If you're going to say, okay, well, this is what the 3-star ball is about. so that we can analyze if there's anything to do with the numbers on the balls and if it's associated with a certain theme or an idea behind it, right? And so you follow that and try to figure out if there's any through line, right? So that's basically all I've thought about it.
Okay, fair. So, and we'll continue. We'll talk more about the Dragon Balls as we go on, but I think we've arrived at our next point. The Dragon Balls have been signaling to this Goku, and I also want to mention, and it's why I brought this picture up whenever we were selecting it. The Goku's eyes are wide open, and his eyebrows are high above, like he is being instantiated with this light.
He is perceiving something to the best of his ability.
Right.
Of the utmost importance. You know, it's all of these frames we keep on grabbing of Goku, he always looks like this. Like his eyebrows up, his eyes wide open, his mouth agape, staring at something that's important to the thematic elements of the story.
And it's actually very poignant because as we go on, we're going to notice a very big contrast to how Goku's portrayed and how Goku has these expressions versus how he expresses himself later on. So
I think definitely a couple of seasons down, we'll be seeing that more.
Yeah. Not too many from now. So, let's go to our title card here. Oolong, the kidnapping monster. So we're going to be talking about Oolong in this episode. Clearly, Oolong. Well, I guess we can get into it. Is there anything you want to say about the title card? I just want to mention, I like having these so that people going through will realize like where we are and what episode we're talking about. Probably going to use these as the thumbnail going forward so that you can know what episode we're on.
Yeah, I mean, my only comment on the title of the episode is that it's commenting on the monstrous nature of Oolong's behavior and mode of being.
Hold on. Let me check if we're still good. Go ahead and say something, Brok. Okay, we're still good.
I am saying something.
Okay. So go ahead. What were you commenting on for the title?
Oh, it's just assigning the label of monstrous to the sort of behavior and mode of being of Oolong. So we kind of have this intonation towards him starting out right here that he is a monster, whatever he is, right? Because as we see him throughout the episode, it's kind of confusing as to what he specifically is.
Oh, we'll see.
But we know that he's a monster, right? There's a monstrous element to him.
Right.
So that's pretty much what you can glean from the title card, I guess.
Fair. And I also want to mention too at this point, because we just came off talking about Dragon Balls, that all the Dragon Balls are viewable in each title slide. I think the significance of that is very clear to say that the enlightenment that is being pursued is ever present in each situation that they're in, and they can always focus on that to continue their goal. Because I don't know any other way to say why, let's say, Pilaf's Dragon Ball would be in this if it's not from the perspective of those like Goku who are collecting the Dragon Balls for not so unholy means. And by unholy, I mean following that way of arrogance and deceit and resentment.
Well, I guess there's a Dragon Ball to be gained from that, but not more than one, I would say.
Yeah, you might be right. But
That's just me speaking from life experience and sort of connecting with Dragon Ball.
hell yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But
right,
that's how I would describe it.
They
right?
are present in every episode.
No, I see what you mean.
I just wanted to make a note of that since we just came off of talking about Dragon Balls, and we're going to be expanding more, especially as more characters are added that know things about the Dragon Balls, and we'll get there. But this is the title card, so if you are watching later and you want to see where we actually start talking about the episode post title card, here it is. So the first thing we're gonna say, and I think I went 2. No, I just went 1. So the first thing we're gonna talk about is we're gonna say that Goku and Bluma arrive at this abandoned village, and everyone has shuttered their doors and things.
Great.
And so Goku, not understanding the idea of society or privacy,
or just the concept of a house. What's a house?
enters, let's say, illegally into someone's home,
Breaks and enters.
and
Gets the,
I think
gets
it's important
the good,
to note, though. I think
gets a good old bonk.
gets a good old bonk, right? But I think it's important to note that the archetypal hero here, right, though even misguided in his methods of trying to do the right thing, let's say, because what he's doing is he's trying to follow what we were just talking about with the Dragon Balls. And so by doing that, he's able to make himself impervious to things that would normally hinder someone, like an axe, but that's a physical manifestation of it. This kind of goes to somewhat of what we talk about our friend Gandalf, allowing things that normally hinder people to hinder him. What do you think about that? Because that's why I pulled this particular image.
I think that it is a mode of being that digs itself into a rut, and that the longer that you sit in that mode of being, the harder it is to get out of it.
What
and to see
specifically describe the mode of being?
Skewing towards meaninglessness, or not perceiving things to have a level of meaning beyond the immediate ends.
So what you're saying is that Pilaf, for example, would not be able to withstand such an assault.
I'm saying that
What would Pilaf do in this situation?
might be dead.
Right, it might have completely stopped him.
Yeah.
But has that come across to you what I'm saying about how, as the archetypal hero here who has oriented himself in such a way, he's made himself impervious to things that would normally harm someone?
I would say that that is the theme of the majority of Dragon Ball and some of Dragon Ball Z.
That's a bold claim. I mean, I think it's a theme that is present.
It's one that weaves its way through, I would say.
It does, for sure.
It's
there are
not
plenty
the
of
theme.
instances of it.
It is a theme of well, it is a theme throughout, I would say.
Right. But that's, at any rate, why I considered this particular screenshot, is because I think it perfectly exemplifies the idea that I'm trying to convey.
Right, is that he's not breaking and entering with malice.
Exactly. It is
And
simply on the orientation and by what he deems morally correct.
well, I want to point this out, and this is a long shot, but this is part of something that's different between Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, is the nature of the world during the era of Dragon Ball, where this sort of thing matters more, and things are a little bit more flexible because it's more mythological.
What do you mean?
It's like,
what do you think? Be more specific than...
like in Dragon Ball
This.
Z, if Gohan smashed someone's door in and then got hit on the head with an axe, like, it wouldn't be a goofy situation. He would be just, like, knocked unconscious. Just from the tone of Dragon Ball Z and the character of Gohan and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I think we need to wait.
That wouldn't even be a situation that would happen in Dragon Ball Z.
I think we need to wait till we get to that point. But yeah.
But you understand what I'm saying, right?
I do, but I slightly disagree, but I don't think we can talk about that right now.
Well, I'm just seeding that in.
Okay, seed it in, seed away.
But I don't think that's something to expand upon. I'm just saying.
This event happens and Goku and Bluma enter the house. The man who is wielding the axe apologizes, thinking that he is some monster named Oolong. And so then we see Goku's interaction with this man's daughter. I don't even know if he has a name. I don't think they name him. We're just going to call him Village Man.
Village Man 1.
So Village Man, this is Village Daughter.
So Village Daughter, be blush. Goku be look.
Well, he's using his powers of discernment, and as
Goku see.
Goku sees.
I am a gorilla.
I am a gorilla. Murder yourselves. So, Goku sees, and in fact, the whole village gathers around, and I think we're going to see an image of that in a minute. But I particularly wanted to pick out this part because we've seen Goku do this to Bluma. That's all. That's the only person we've seen him. This is actually the second person we've seen him do this to. So now he's actually determining girls from women. If you notice, he's expanding his domain of discernment.
Just literally.
Right, just literally each time. And we'll see the next person he does it to is a new level for him to discern. But right now, she is offering to help him, and I think she helps him with the wound as well. So she's a nurturing figure, but even though she's still a child, whereas she's more feminine, let's say, than Bluma, who is not that feminine.
Well, Bluma is not a nurturing figure, I would say.
Right, and here we do see some nurturing, but
well,
let's go ahead.
We see a separation in the feminine there, right? Where you see like the creative and then the nurturing, but not together.
That's right. Someone in the chat, Chris Sombra, made a note. The door of the home of the village man says Sherman Priest. So we should call him Sherman. His name is Sherman. He does have a name.
Priest Sherman.
This is Daughter Priest.
And this is Lil Sherman.
Oh, man. I just wanted to make sure. So let's move on from here and talk about Oolong. So Oolong the Terrible. Oolong the kidnapping monster. This is the first image that we see of Oolong as told by the village denizens to Goku and Bluma. Obviously menacing, right? This is supposed to be demonic in nature. It is almost as if someone knows what will scare people. But this is how they see Oolong in their eyes. Now we'll see later on Oolong is some other things, but don't want to spoil it too much. So what he is doing is he is coming around in this demonic form, kidnapping girls to marry. Now, I want to make some good points, I think, on why it's important that Oolong arrives in this point in the story. So we know that Bluma's wish is to have a boyfriend. And this is a monster who takes girls and marries them, right? Now we'll see how Bluma reacts to the monster, but I wanted to point that out because it's also apparent that Goku is now exploring the realm of the opposite sex. Goku is powerful. Goku could do this if he so choose. Right, but we'll kind of talk about that as we go. But what do you think of that, Brok?
Yeah, I think that a lot of characters serve as a sounding board as to say what is good about Goku that's understated about him. There's a sort of element that's like, look at these aspects that someone that has a certain power, let's say, they lack these aspects and so they abuse it. And so you have someone like Oolong who can shapeshift. And it's like, if you know that if Goku could shapeshift, he wouldn't do something like this.
Well,
you can see the diametric just difference between them, where it's
that's not really that's sorry, I was imprecise in what I was saying. The shape shifting itself we'll talk about. I didn't want to talk about that necessarily yet. Just but what I meant is the idea of abusing your power. Perceived power. Goku could Goku is a child now and not perceived as dangerous, right? Goku could be perceived as dangerous, and we'll see how he could be perceived later on as very dangerous. Now, he could exploit his power to exploit the opposite sex, which is exactly what Oolong is doing, right? That's more of what I was drawing with, not so much as if Goku was a shapeshifter, he wouldn't do that thing.
Yeah, there's this aspect too, and I don't think that this is central. This is kind of an aside thing, but there's this commentary that Dragon Ball has about, like, the sort of masculine form, and it's like the good way to be masculine and the bad way to be masculine. It's almost like good ways to channel your spirit and then bad ways to channel that spirit as well. And I feel like it's something that young people should see, because they need this guidance to say, like, you know, like, you're going to embrace a masculine spirit, and what you do with it determines who you are. And it's like, here's someone who's doing something bad with it. And it's represented as power, you know. So, like, for Oolong, it's a power, and it's like what he does with his
literally a
spirit.
Power, like, it's a special ability.
Yeah, but what he does with his spirit is he abuses it, you know, and he's deceptive. And we see this with so many of these early villains, that they're not the more, I would call them toothless villains. I mean, not in like a severe way, but, you know, against what happens later in the series.
Toothless in the grand scheme, though.
Yeah. But we see this with them where it's very, how would I say? they're embodying a pathology. And Goku arrives and just unwinds it.
Well, what do you think about the so to go back to last episode talking about the myth of Saint George, flag behind me. There's more to the story than I shared last time. I guess we're going to have to uncover more of it now. But the reason that the princess's hand is offered to St. George is because each year the citizens of the town would draw lots to decide who would be sacrificed to the dragon. And it just so happened that the year that St. George arrived was the same year that the princess was selected in the lottery. Now, the reason I think that's significant is because the idea of confronting the dragon, getting the woman, the gold, which that is the gold, is to have a life and a family, right?
It's to expand your responsibility.
Right, exactly. And then become a paragon of the community and expand from there. But what I'm saying here, is that this is a perversion of that idea because Oolong is using deception and he is exploiting what he knows is his own strength to pull the wool over normies, let's say. It's like someone who on Twitter will say, I'm a historian, let me take this Robert E. Lee quote out of context and paint him in a bad light. And I know the exact context of the full quote, so it doesn't surprise me. Like, I can see right through it. It's that abuse of that special power.
Right. He is essentially abusing his anonymity, right? He could be anyone.
That too. Right. Yeah. That's a part of it.
Right. He doesn't have to actually be Oolong. And so because of that, we see this projection of all of his negative aspects out into these interactions. And the way that they are projected out is he is essentially I don't know. I think you could describe it better than I could. The situation that he's creating. But maybe we should just move forward to talk about that.
Yeah, so this is how the villagers see him here. And we'll get in further to all the repercussions of what Oolong is doing. So next, we see the village offering the Dragon Ball in exchange for the ridding of this monster. Now, additionally, I want to mention a parallel to Journey to the West, because the first, let's say, side character that Sun Wukong and the Buddhist monk meet in the story is a pig. A pig-like creature who is very strong, who they eventually do call Piggy, which may be a reason why later on we'll see some allusions to that. But more of what I want to mention about that is that it's interesting to note that if we're talking about the coupling of two ideas, in Journey to the West, Sun Wukong is punished, and I'm briefly going to summarize this, is punished for causing too much chaos in heaven and sentenced to 500 years in a stone prison. After that 500 years is up, he is released by God to travel with a Buddhist monk to India to get the sacred texts that offer enlightenment. So, along the journey, they meet a pig monster who has married into a family. The issue is, one, he's produced no offspring, so they're upset about that. So there's no grandchildren. And two, while he does work a great deal, he eats so much that they can't feed him. And he's basically taken this family hostage. So I think this is an expansion of it, because here we can see that Oolong has taken a village hostage with multiple daughters taken. Right.
So we have an intermingling.
Right. I just wanted to draw the parallel there between the two stories.
I was thinking about that earlier today too, that I knew that it was partially this, the St. George story, right? That part of it was obvious, but the other piece of him is sort of something more, is just cloudy to me, right? Because I don't have as broad of an analysis, so. But yeah, that is it's interesting too, because I've been thinking for I guess the past 2 days now that Dragon Balls most likely represent enlightenment, just specifically like enlightenment. I think I said it at one point, like if you were going to boil it down to one word, it's enlightenment. But
Absolutely.
I had no idea that was the theme of Journey to the West. I know nothing of Journey to the West.
Right. The whole thing that they're going after.
But I'm serious. I didn't know. So whenever you said that just now, it just blew my mind.
Exactly. And see, that's how I arrived at this analysis, is because of that that idea.
So that's how central it is to the themes in Dragon Ball that we arrived at it from opposite ends.
Yeah, and that is an amazing idea.
And that would be why you haven't explained everything to me.
Could be
why I've seen you kind of like trying not to say specific things.
Right, I do a fair bit of that, and that's the thing. Like it is such an archetypal human tale, because it does marry those two ideas. It marries the idea of Western tradition and Eastern tradition.
It really does.
Both aimed towards an ultimate good.
North.
Right. And so here, the village matriarch is offering up the Dragon Ball for Oolong's removal. Bluma, thinking that Goku's strong enough to deal with any monster, goes ahead and offers it up, saying she's the brains of the operation.
Of course.
I like this particular frame, because this is often done with the Dragon Balls. Pointing towards the Dragon Balls is something that the characters do a great deal. They point, they look, and that's significant, because that's the the orientation, the aiming towards the subconscious. And you should notice
it's archetypal.
Well,
in the imagery, it's instantiated there all the way down.
I think that people, if they listen to their own body language, would more be able to perceive meaning when it comes across to them.
Yeah, I think that there's this odd translation from the written word to the visual medium, I suppose. But I don't know. There are levels of meaning that are lost upon people. And I think that there are levels of meaning in the imagery in Dragon Ball that I just completely went right over my head until I was looking for it, This is complex. This is complex in the way that, like, fine art is complex, where you come back to a painting and then you're like, oh, here's this other element to the painting that I didn't realize was there. You go to something like this multiple times and you realize that there are strokes that you didn't see at the past, time that you looked at it. There are elements to this, coming back to it and trying to view it from another angle. You find value in it that you didn't know was there. I mean, that marks fine art for me.
But so many people treat this as something to just see once, look at quickly, and then walk by.
well, Goku's character doesn't have any development.
Exactly.
What is he? He's like this boring Superman. He just has a tail.
So, anyways, anything you want to say about this particular image?
Nope.
'Cause I
Bulma
selected
pointed
it.
ball. Bulma like ball.
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 Okay, so here we go. Let's get into some interactions between the kidnapping monster and our protagonist. So I think you can go first on this one because I've been going first on a lot of these. So I want to give you the floor here, and then I'll clean it up. Anything that you missed.
I know you've been waiting to say it. It's kind of weird. I hadn't really thought that much about the situation that Goku's in here, but it's obvious why he would be uncomfortable, right? Like, Goku has no feminine side. He has no femininity in him. It's the most alien experience right now of his entire life. He is in the... It's great because this entire season... Not this entire season, but most of the season so far has all been an analog for Goku's awakening sexually. And it's hilarious. It's all on this crazy, the world is a stage, and it's all like a play enacting Goku becoming aware of himself and the rest of the world, the opposite sex, his role in his, his life, his hierarchy. It's like, as he gets older, it expands further and it affects more people and he takes on more responsibility, and then maybe he could take on the responsibility of a relationship. And so you see this with Goku here, where it's like he's just realizing like what the feminine experience could possibly even be like, right? So I could say in a meta way, think of Goku imagining himself as that devil. Now, Goku is cringing at the experience of the feminine experience. The experience of the experience. The experience of, like, being feminine.
That's an interesting analysis because Goku in canon is making this face because he has to pee.
Well, I just know that Goku's uncomfortable with being, dressing up like a girl and being deceptive and being feminine, like...
That's the thing I want to stick on there is the deception. So it is what I was thinking was the interface between the fiction of Oolong and the fiction of Goku in this moment.
All right.
So Goku is dressed up, but Oolong is also dressed up. Right. This is not what Oolong looks like. Right. And so we see the other thing to note here is the raggedy nature of Goku and the rather well-dressed manner of Oolong. This actually does not seem like a bloodthirsty monster at the first time we see him. It's a subversion of that idea, right? I think in one thing that it's saying is that a man that does not know how to approach women might look like a monster, right? But it is because they haven't yet acquired that skill. It's not that they're inhuman. And we'll get to some of the deceit that goes on how Oolong appears in this scene. But the last thing I do want to say about Goku is he didn't want to wear this dress because he just wanted to fight the monster, right? Who made him wear the dress?
Who did? Was it Bulma?
It was Bluma, yeah.
Yeah. I think that only helps to solidify part of my psychological take on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is that a lot of things are they're analogous to the, like, almost an archetypal hero's, like, sexual awakening in a weird way, but not because it's a sexual awakening, because it's part of that age that is also the age of becoming more masculine too. Like those are hand in hand because they happen simultaneously. It's just these are intermingled as ideas because they're embedded just deep into expression, I would say.
Now, what I want to reiterate is that the flawed logos of Bluma guiding the archetypal hero into a deceitful bargain with a deceitful actor is what we're seeing here. And the dichotomy of this picture is why I selected it, is because they're both in disguise.
Well, there's other stuff, I guess you could say.
What else?
Just all of my rambling.
Oh. Let's move on to this. Yeah, so Goku, he needs to pee
because
that's interesting. That's an interesting idea. That's interesting.
That is a really good idea. I think that might be intermingled into all of that.
I think we're gonna talk about that when we get to that point. But perhaps that is the masculine side trying to
break out,
right?
Yeah,
out of the deceit for sure. Excellent job, Chris Sombra. We don't know him. He's just some random person.
He's been sticking with us
ever since episode 1. So anyway,
it's gonna be the VIP.
Anyway, so here we see Oolong take the shape of a man desirable to Bluma. And what does she do? She walks out of the Sherman Priest door that still has the hole from Goku, and she basically offers herself to this visage of masculinity. And what's going on here is the tendency for women to fall for the visage of masculinity. And that's why there are a lot of unhappy women, is because they will see someone who appears to be masculine enough to be a proper mate, let's say.
Yeah, now I kind of, as an aside, I love this about Dragon Ball because we're shifting so fast. But immediately we're in Bulma's frame, right? Because Dragon Ball is not a single POV story, right? Like, everybody knows that Goku's the POV character, but for real,
the main characters.
This show has things to say about multiple perspectives. It is complex in that way, and I think that it is an embodiment of a person who may be wanting to express what they believe to be the most ideal way of being through this story. I think that's what we're trying to ultimately arrive at. But
well, I think that's actually the point of all artistic endeavors, is to describe a mode of being that can improve the previous paradigm.
Yeah.
So you think about great works of art like the Inferno, Dante's Inferno. That's exactly what that did, because at the time, those people were super corrupted. Dante wrote about them being in hell, right? And they moved on from that. You look at other pieces of fiction, like Frankenstein, let's say, or Dracula, right? So you look at those pieces of fiction, and they describe modes of being which either end up unholy or... Actually, both are.
It's true. Yeah, I hadn't really thought that much of Dracula, but it's almost like it's not really about the vampires at all, is it?
No,
it's not. I guess wow, that's funny.
Blowing Brok's mind over here.
Well, it's just funny because it's like, well, thinking about it that way, if I read Dracula right now, which I've read parts of Dracula. I haven't just like read all the way through Bram Stoker's Dracula, I don't think. But if I read it right now, I would probably see it very differently
than how you would have, yeah.
Probably just from our conversations. Just kind of stirring up that sort of not really archetypal, but that's skewing towards that more basic analysis, right? That
it can be archetypal. Depends on
not
what we're talking
necessarily,
about.
but yeah.
But right, and yeah, that's what we're getting at. But here, and I like that you took the aside to praise Dragon Ball about its shifting of focus.
It's great. It's great.
But in this instance, we see the ideal masculine, the image of the ideal masculine, seducing, let's say, the feminine character that we know of as Bluma. Meanwhile, at this point, Goku is urinating, I believe, or trying to find a place to urinate. So
I gotta pee.
I did select this particular screen grab because it is Bluma, and there's another one too that I appreciated, but it was just Bluma. You could not see Oolong in the frame of her opening up her jacket, exposing her breasts for what she perceives as the masculine character. Now,
I can't believe that frame isn't here. Is it here? Is it
it's
the
not
next frame?
here. It's not here.
What if it's the next frame?
I mean, she's not actually like.
It's just a good frame.
It is a good frame.
Because her face is fucking hilarious.
It is. No, I know the expression, and I was considering putting it, but I wanted to make sure that we encapsulated the entire point. And here, while she's not as memeable, I think that it is suitable for our purposes. But I want to note too that even though she can see this is the same character, that was a second ago a monster, right? It doesn't matter to her. She immediately falls for the deception. Now, in my opinion, let's say, I think that is her willing ignorance. And I think that is a commentary on the willing ignorance of women when it comes to hypergamy in general.
Yeah, I think we've seen that specific thing starting to manifest immediately with Bulma in the previous episode. I think that without thinking too hard on it, I think that it's going to manifest as an idea, but not necessarily as a core theme further throughout the series. But there's just with the fact that I know that Roshi continues to try to tempt Bulma, and it's going to be part of her character. Whether or not she resists him, I think that's important for Bulma. So yeah, in regards to the hypergamy and what you were talking about.
Fair, and we'll talk about that more as we get on, especially as we get to the end of this series. Actually, I think
the end of this specific season, as we get closer towards the realization of the ill-formed wish originally for Bulma, anyway, with her situation.
Okay, so let's move on from here. I could barely get this image in. The widescreen was not invented when Dragon Ball was made, and so here I could barely get these two characters in. And I wanted to specifically mention this is after Goku has thrown aside his disguise and is now openly confronting the manifestation of chaos in front of him.
And also
because that's what I want to talk about, shape-shifting as well. So I want to arrive at that shape-shifting point I mentioned earlier. So shape-shifting in fiction, shape-shifting is often used to convey a metaphorical mode of being, let's say, that is not on substantiated ground, right? So in this instance, Oolong can channel the chaos to become whatever he wants, to drive away any order that could bring him to heel.
Right, but it's insubstantial, right?
That's exactly it. It's insubstantial.
But it is a...
Sometimes in fiction, it's not insubstantial. I just was saying
Sometimes,
in general.
But but in the case of Oolong...
In the case of Oolong, no.
That's why I kind of mentioned earlier, I called some of these earlier characters who aren't necessarily villains toothless, just because it's kind of...
Oh, well, I was never considering Oolong a villain.
Well, not
so
not villain,
but we'll talk more about Oolong.
In the context of an episode, Oolong's a villain.
Right. He's the antagonist of the episode.
Right.
Right.
But he's not a real villain. In the same way that Vegeta's a villain, but he's not a villain. Right.
So, no, don't bring in Vegeta yet.
It's just a different scale.
Please don't. No, it isn't. It's completely different. We can't.
Comment in the chat if you think Oolong and Vegeta are on the same level.
Like this video if you think that Oolong and Vegeta are not the same idea on different levels.
And do both if you identify as chaotic evil.
Okay, so in this clip, you can see Goku is actually ready to go. He has experienced the thrill of confronting chaos in the past multiple times. We've seen already. And he's willing to do it again against this creature. Now, when Oolong is in this form, he's constantly threatening Goku with a fake Spanish accent, which is hilarious to me. I mean,
Oh, yeah, the Spanish accent is pretty fucking funny.
As a...
It was cracking me up.
Mexican owl, it's funny to me.
It's true.
So...
It's pretty fucking funny.
So, Goku... he's the first one apparently in this village to stand up to this, and it's not so much that this character is toothless, I would say, Brok, is that he has never had a challenge to him, which is actually, as we can see, has later in the episode has negatively affected him as well, not being challenged.
Well, it would seem to me that he is the sort of ill-formed being that exists that has not been legitimately challenged in that way. And Goku is here. Goku is absolutely courageous, right? Anyone else in this village? Gigantic bull? Nah. Not today, man. I got shit to do. But Goku, he's like a bull? Yeah, I could punch a bull.
Well, I think it's
and that's not something that I don't think that's something that Oolong's ready for, because he's in a mode where he's not facing that sort of courage, and it's about to be broken up, and he's about to be humbled, right? Throughout the episode. And that's ultimately, I mean, that humbling is something that is core throughout the series, right? But so we'll see that happen.
Hold on. I want to touch on that
as well,
because if we're going to talk about the Petersonian unholy trinity and the holy trinity of, let's say, quality, the unholy.
Well, let's call it out specifically.
Well, that's what I'm going to say. The unholy trinity being arrogance, deceit, and resentment. And the holy trinity being the opposite of those, right? Being humility, integrity, and... what am I thinking of? No. There's a specific word. Oh, gratitude. Gratitude.
Humility, integrity, gratitude.
Right.
Yes. That
is the holy trinity that you can embody. And so What we're talking about here, the humility that these characters will experience, is the first step, right?
Right.
And later on, we'll see them embody the other parts, especially Oolong, because he's going to speak forth something that is integral to his being that saves the world.
Well, I guess that's something to think on.
Right. I don't know if you'd consider that, but that's part of my analysis.
No, I've been, it's been marinating. I've been trying to place it.
You're putting lime juice on it, make it
Yeah.
tastier.
Yeah, well, it's,
Speaking
you know,
of tasty,
it's in the
I'm
oven.
hungry.
It's in the oven.
I want snacks. All right, so at this point, I think we have a picture of it. No, we don't. Okay, so we do have a picture of this, which is basically a recap. Is Oolong as a bull runs away and escapes, let's say, and reverts to his original form, or his more or less true form. Now, there are some things that we can say about the design other than he is a communist pig. It's funny that Toriyama would put a communist pig into the story. And the reason I say communist is the uniform, obviously, right? And that's the first time we see Oolong in his real pig form. So it's funny that Toriyama would include a communist pig as a shape-shifting coward.
Yeah. I mean, as someone who's representing...
But it's poignant.
Yeah.
Because what are communists but shape-shifting cowards?
Based.
Stream.
Based.
Well, and I mean, that's what I'm saying. I think that the communist part maybe is not conveyed besides simple imagery.
Okay, so the communist part is also the assumption of...
Because as a kid, that's not something mythological. It's kind of outside.
It's not mythological, but it nests into this idea of the idea of being owed something by default rather than earning it for yourself, and then the idea that you can project an idea of yourself to yourself that you do deserve it, when realistically all those shapes that you shift into are insubstantial and don't stand up to any scrutiny.
Not to mention the fundamental philosophy behind communism, saying that the ends justify the means.
Of course.
And so
Notwithstanding.
Oolong here is encapsulating that idea.
Right.
And we'll see how that plays out for him in a minute. But he has tricked Goku. He has tricked our hero.
It is great. I do want to point out right now, before we get there, that I think it's great how it does turn out. Because it's
better. The more I think about it, the better that ending becomes.
Well, you have to think about the idea that it's a cartoon, too, and that Dragon Ball can resonate with children in a way that we struggle to resonate with it. Like, it's an exercise to resonate with Dragon Ball in the way that younger people can resonate with Dragon Ball. The meaning that you see in it was easier for you to see, I know, because you watched it when you were much younger than me. So this is something that's like, well, I don't want to go on any tangents, but I will point out that I'm disappointed in the media that younger people are watching these days. And in the year of our destruction, 2020.
You're not a fan of Logan Paul?
Not specifically.
Shape-shifting communist pig.
Started out with wealth. Famous for having wealth. Got wealth.
Shit.
Wow. Imagine Imagine having wealth.
Well, let's get back on track. I don't want to get too off topic there. So the deceit is very apparent in this, and so what will happen, as we see in this episode, is that Goku will use that aspect of himself to bring integrity to the situation. Anything else you want to say about this?
I just think it's funny, you know. We always get these situations where also the antagonists just don't understand Goku. They underestimate him, they look at him, they look down on him, they look down their nose at him. They're like, look at this kid. And
well, that's a thing that people who are cynical think about those who find meaning in life.
yeah, I think absolutely. I think it's not that apparent at times, but if you look at it, it's a core tenet throughout through Dragon Ball that every time that he comes across someone who's embodying pathology similarly, they're looking down on Goku. They're looking at him as inferior, and I think that's part of why they portray Goku as, or why Toriyama portrays Goku as a child, too. Fundamentally, is tied into that, so that it's like the wisdom that a child can have, the hopefulness that you lose in aging. It's tied back into that, and I think that it's identifiable for children, and portraying it that way makes it more identifiable for adults whenever we're looking back at it. And
I don't want to necessarily get on that tangent quite yet, because I think that we're going to do an episode at the end of season 1 where we talk specifically about season 1 and some of those choices about Goku being a child. And I don't think we've seen all the reasons yet as to why that is. So I don't want to go into a full discussion about it, but I think it's more than that. I think you're on the right track.
Well, I'm glad that it's apparent here in the analysis, just right here in the beginning. So I think it's going to be rooted that much deeper that this is a very solid analysis when we arrive at it. Then
right, and and that's something that I think is unique about Dragon Ball, is that it expands further than other mythologies into its subject matter, let's say. So let's move on from this piece and go into this. You know, you laughed when I selected this picture. You chuckled. You mumbled.
No, I chuckled because I knew that there was legitimate courage in this child.
Okay, right. So why did I select the picture?
I just put a Christmas cookie in my mouth.
Eat your Christmas cookie. I'm going to summarize what happened in the last couple of scenes.
I'm going to give you my analysis.
Good. But hold on. I want to tell for the audience.
Give you your analysis.
God damn it, for the audience.
So this boy's
Hold on.
I'm just kidding.
So Goku goes back into the town, and Oolong decides that he has to make... Oh, actually, you know, there's something that we missed. The reason Oolong ran as a bull was because the clock notified him that his time was almost up.
Oh, yeah, well, it's not sustainable. Period.
Right. Oh, man. So I want to touch on that, exactly. The insustainability of deception.
Yeah, I mean, that's written right all over him, right? I mean, and there's this aspect of it, I think, that's going to be coming up later on with Yamcha, too, of an extracted piece of him that can shapeshift, and so, I don't know,
We'll talk about that.
I think that's something, I think it's embedded in that, but, go on.
I did want to mention the, right, what you were saying, the unsustainability.
Yeah, it's just unsustainable, that's all.
And so, a new deception is hatched by Oolong to reapproach Goku as something even more terrifying, and in his arrogance he believes that this will scare Goku enough to get him out of this town that allowed me to continue to pathologize not only it but myself. Goku being strong enough to help a drowning man, decides to carry him in through this, and we're gonna see how that plays out. But Goku's actions of standing up to the image of fear itself has then inspired this young boy to show real courage.
Yeah.
And so, go ahead. I just wanted to bring us up to speed on what happened.
Well, so this imagery here, where I think it's more important that it's someone that's young that's showing courage here, because, I think that it's the devil's in the details there, where it keeps coming up in the age of Goku and how it's relative here. It just kind of it bleeds into it because we have this young boy here who's standing up to courageously to this thing, to this idea, to this projection of what would you call it? Is a sort of malicious projection of masculinity that is unsustainable and deceptive and childish in its nature.
Well, and I think more to that point is a more primal idea in history, being the idea of the raider, right? The Viking who carries off women, right? This is a play at that. And the ability to stand up to it is what this boy is exhibiting here, right? The ability to stand up to the idea of dying. This boy is encapsulating the actions that it would take to conquer death, let's say. And he is inspired to do so because he sees someone who is oriented towards just that, who is not taking that action. And you can see this in multiple historical examples of people who are inspired to take violence in someone else's name who is acting in nonviolence. Goku actually hasn't attacked before this kid attacks.
Yeah, I think that there is this sort of shifting frame as we go throughout Dragon Ball, where there are sort of the characters don't always serve the same purpose as we get throughout the story, right? So it's, to call back, and not to go on a tangent, but Roshi's the Blind King, but he's not only the Blind King, right? And there's other aspects to him, and so since there's this shifting element where the frame of what we're looking at isn't just like there are lessons to be learned from the perspectives of ancillary characters that you wouldn't expect to be important, because sometimes the protagonist doesn't play the same role from episode to episode in the greater sort of mythological framework of what's happening here, and sort of the storied morality.
Right, and this boy is being encouraged by Goku's show of morality. Now, what about that nose drip? Let's talk about that real quick.
Nose drip.
This kid's got a nose drip. He's a snot-nosed kid, right? He's literally someone who would not be expected to show courage.
Sure, but rising above that.
Well, I was going to mention the contrast of how Oolong acts, let's say, when confronted. Because we already saw that when confronted by Goku, he did not act in a forthright way. How did he act? A further deception, right?
I mean, always.
Now, here's the question. Is Oolong deceiving himself at the moment? And we'll find out in just a minute, but we know the answer.
I mean, I think the answer might be a little evident.
So, this kid shows real courage, and we'll go ahead and move on to his capture. So, Goku, just to recap, Goku doesn't fall for his giant Gundam monster form,
punches.
who was also holding ramen.
It's like, okay.
It's kind of funny.
The idea of Goku seeing through something like that, and the embodiment of the idea that he is funny.
Right. It's
like, it just doesn't mean anything to Goku because he just sees him for what it is. So
right, and Goku, I mean, a monster is a monster is a monster. Goku
yeah, it's
thinks
like, okay,
a car is a monster.
Oh, this is the thing that I have to stop for the good. Okay, like, okay,
right.
I try just as hard.
And so once he is revealed, because I believe what happens is that Oolong stacks up some bricks and is like, if you're so strong, break these bricks. Goku easily breaks those bricks. And so Oolong's freaked out. He flies away as a bat. Bat is not fast enough to outrun the Kintone. So he transforms into a missile. And a missile is not fast enough to outrun the Kintone. Now think about what a missile is.
What's happening here is Oolong is realizing for the first time that he is not actually morally good. Goku has introduced him to the idea that he could actually be erring from the good, and he's running away from it. He's saying, no, there's no way. Like, I'm a good person. The communist flees from the idea that they could actually be malicious to anybody, because the entire manifesto of their ideology is that they are good, that they are for the good of humanity. It's all about, I am good.
Well, another thing about it is the idea of strength not being something to be ashamed of or not strive for, because Oolong is not strong. Goku clearly demonstrates his strength, right?
Right.
And by doing so, Oolong is so averse to the idea that he could be morally strong, because really that's what we're talking about in terms of kind of the power levels of this early Dragon Ball season. Is it's about moral strength.
Oh, for the majority of Dragon Ball, I would say power just really equals moral fortitude.
Right. And so Goku's moral fortitude shocks Oolong so much,
to the point that he is questioning his own moral fortitude now. He is no longer comfortable in his frame of mind. Right?
And so he has no choice but to run. But when you're directionless, you are impossible to be faster than someone who has a direction.
Right.
And so Goku catches Oolong, and that is the last time we see his hat with the communist star.
Yeah,
I think we
see how that worked out for him.
Yeah, it did not work out too well. But he catches him here before he falls. Now, another thing is the deception was so unsustainable that without Goku, Oolong would have died. Just to make that perfectly clear, is that in this picture here, he just untransformed from a missile because time was up.
Oh, I thought you said it the other way around. I thought you said without Oolong, Goku would have died.
Did I? I may have said that. I hope I didn't.
Run it back. Leave us a comment below. Was I wrong? Was I right?
Who knows? So
I don't know.
But what I mean here is the deception of Oolong.
Right.
Oolong's deception was so unsustainable that it would have been ultimately self-destructive.
That the only thing that could save him was the mode of being that Goku represents. And so without it, he would have died. And so he grasped it, and it saved him from himself, ultimately, the choices that he had made and the path that he was on. Goku was there for him right then. And I think that thematically that's very important for Oolong, you know?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Because this first season, which is interesting that you said we'd probably get through this episode quickly, because I think this first season focuses so much on Oolong that it's
Well, the first season's not... In a sense, it's less about Goku than it is about a lot of other people all combined, and what he represents to them, and what it means to the greater story of Dragon Ball. Right?
I mean, Goku has plenty to do.
He does, but I mean, look, similar to
Look.
this situation,
But it,
look, I am a gorilla.
I am a gorilla. Murder yourself.
What I mean is, characters serve as sounding boards for other characters, right? And, like, this episode doesn't represent necessarily a gigantic leap forward in Goku's character.
Say that
But-
part again?
I said that this episode doesn't necessarily represent a gigantic leap forward for Goku's character. And, just literally, it's...
A little. Goku does learn a lot in the episode, but it's not the primary focus. Oolong has a lot of growth throughout the episode, and I understand what you're saying there.
What I mean is, like, the integration of Oolong into the party is more about Oolong's growth and what he can gain from the mode of being that Goku is.
Right. And so let's go on to see how this resolves, because Oolong, even though he did not self-destruct, still has to face the consequences of his actions. And so we see this. We see the ultimate consequence of what happens when a deceptive masculine form is unable to tame the feminine spirit. Oolong is completely dominated by these women, these young women. Let's say.
So we see that Oolong ultimately is impotent in all of his projection, right?
Mm-hmm.
In all of his masculine projection. By doing so, he has weakened himself to be controlled by the idea of the girls that he has captured.
Exactly. Yes.
And so he in his own domain, he is impotent, and as such, in his own mind, he is weak. And he is weak of character, and I would say that Dragon Ball is a show about the character of characters.
Well, the strengthening of your character.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say the strength or weakness of your character, where you stand as an individual.
And how to become, ultimately, what Dragon Ball is about is how to become
the ultimate
impervious.
Yeah, the ultimate representation of the strength of character, right? And
you become sort of a super self. But we'll get there.
Self.
We'll get there. But right, we see the indulgence. What Oolong even mentions that they are costing him money, and that he even admits that this is not sustainable.
Yeah.
So I wanna say that this is similar to things that, I mean, I've seen young men in my life think that, like, giving women whatever they want is just how to treat them.
Well, yeah, I mean, this elevation of sort of, well, replacing your own value with the value of,
You
like,
said
hypothetical
Roshi
value.
is a simp.
Oh,
But look
well,
at this.
Oh, we're getting there.
Look at this. Look at this.
So, what a simp is doing, ultimately, in the hierarchy of values, is representing themselves in an extension of themselves that doesn't actually exist, right? So they're saying, I'm representing myself with money, I'm representing myself with something, but I exist to this extent in the world, in this domain, right? And in that way, it is this malformed representation of the self. And so in this sense, we have Oolong, who is ultimately the impotent, malformed masculine that has convinced itself that is the ideal masculine, because it has managed to surround itself with the reinforcement of its own ideas, but ultimately is just a projection of an idea that is not realized.
Well, not to get too far into politics as well, I think it's the same idea as the female ally, right?
Sure.
The shapeshifter, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I hadn't really connected it to that, but yeah.
So go ahead and connect it to that.
No, ultimately, it is just the person who tries to represent what they need to be at the time to be where they need to be to fit in so that they can be reassured by whoever they're around or have their beliefs reinforced by the people around them.
And this is what that gets you, people that don't actually care about you and that cost you personal and psychological well-being.
Sure.
Right, just wanted to bring that up because I think that's a final point we can make here in this episode. I don't think we did that thing. Hold on.
Please stand by.
Please.
We have a little bit of technical difficulty happening right now.
Okay. We do have one more. So now I do want to bring us back to kind of where we arrived. Our very first clip, or our very first screenshot of this episode was Goku staring at the ball and being enlightened. And now we have Bluma staring at the ball and being enlightened as well. So they get the ball from the village after exposing Oolong for what he is and getting the children back to where they belong.
Right, and I think in a sense there's this sort of kind of there's a different tier to what is happening in this episode where it's like you have these young people being seduced by this idea that this communist pig represents as a shape-shifting ideal, and it's I mean, I don't know if you need to expound on that too much, but it's pretty funny in a sense.
Well, right, and I think too that the reason Bluma is being enlightened by the end is because her idea of how to conquer deception with deception has been utterly disproved, and now she sees that the way to go forward with it is by restoring the integrity of the family.
Restoring the integrity of the family? What do you mean?
Well, the imbalance here is that all of the daughters are being seduced by the idea that you were talking about, right? And by restoring the idea of the family, Bloomer realizes you can't fight deception with deception. You have to be forthright in your actions.
Right, yeah. I mean, that's the sort of thing that we're also going to be calling back to as we get through the season, because I think it's the forthright nature. I think forthright's a really good word for it. That what Dragon Ball is trying to express is a mode of being that can be described as forthright and other ways, but I would say forthright is part of it.
Well, I mean, let's think about Bluma's actions, right? She throws herself at Oolong. That's the last thing we saw her do, was throw herself at Oolong, transforms into a bull. She realizes that that's not the case, right? Like, he's not actually the masculine form that she thought he was. And by seeing the actions of the restoration of these young women to their families, she has been able to gain the enlightenment that it takes to have the Dragon Ball.
Well, you can also look at it that way then, that Bulma is gaining the enlightenment that she can see through the image of masculinity down to a deeper level of masculinity that is more important than just the sort of very first base level of shape-shifting projection of identity in sort of that sense. And so she's grappling with her own relationship with masculinity.
And I think that's actually indicative of what young women should do when they see people who are shape-shifting just to get their attention.
Exactly. I think they should see through it and understand it for what it is, in that it is a ploy, and that true masculinity lies in a sort of deeper understanding of character.
And so it's an anti, let's say, pickup artist narrative.
Sure, or someone. It's also a way for Bulma to gain the enlightenment that her idea of like what a boyfriend is shaping what her wish really means.
Exactly. And that's all the stuff I was wanting to mention on her enlightenment here, because I think it's poignant that at the beginning of the episode we see Goku being enlightened, and at the end of the episode we see Bluma being enlightened with Oolong, the kidnapping monster. Closing thoughts from you, Brok.
I think that the episode, I think this is one of the more difficult to dissect episodes, specifically in themes, to try to lay them out individually. It's sort of one of those ones where you can look at an episode and be like, "Hey, that's a dragon. He killed it. That Saint George."
Yes.
But sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to separate out what the events in the episode mean for the different characters, and what the characters represent, and sort of you kind of try to extrapolate on that and what Toriyama's thinking and what he's projecting into the art and saying about those ideas and what those characters, ultimately are to him. So it can take a little bit of time to dissect it when it's not so simple. And so I think this was a bit more difficult of an episode, but I think it's important also to, it's a good reminder to us that there's a good amount that it has to say about other characters than Goku and the development of their characters.
I would say that this episode is the introduction of another archetypal piece of the puzzle. Oolong is archetypal in this first season when he does have actions in the story. Now, next episode, we are going to see how some of those archetypes play out, and we'll talk about that at the time. But this is the introduction of his character, and these are the major flaws that we see. The deceit. We also see Bluma's illusion of deceit, Goku's deceit. This is all an episode around that idea.
Yeah, I mean, who would have guessed that an episode about a shape-shifting thief was about deceit, ultimately?
Well, and I think it is very important to mention that the deceit is self-destructive.
Yes, that it serves for your own ruin. That Oolong did not get what he stole. He stole something that made him miserable.
Right, exactly.
And it's very, very important that
is the case.
Was the case for him. He couldn't have gotten what he stole, right?
It would be so much less mythological if he actually...
That is an aspect of the story that resonates down to the levels of great literature like Dostoevsky.
Oh, man, let me get back to that, actually, because in Journey to the West, the character Piggy is not in a happy marriage. It's not all that he had bargained for to begin with.
Oh, wow. Are we going to expand on this?
Not too much, because I don't remember too much further about it.
Well, let's see.
I mean, so basically, the Piggy is upset because the family that he has ingratiated himself in and married the daughter of is ungrateful for all the work that he does. And he figured that being a somewhat mythological creature and able to sow fields of rice 6 times what the normal man can do, that they would be appreciative of his abilities rather than disgusted by his appearance, let's say.
I see.
And so it's not what he bargained for either. And when he starts traveling with Sun Wukong and the Buddhist priest, he starts to, there's dynamic there, like Piggy playing tricks on Sun Wukong and things like that, exploiting his position. There are aspects of Oolong in there, but I think it is poignant to note that when we first meet them, neither of them are in the place that they thought they would be by using the deception in the first place. Because it's worthy to note as well that when Piggy in the story Journey to the West approached the family to marry the daughter, he looked like a normal man. And over time, he became more bestial in his true form, let's say.
Right, I would say that was the inevitable expression of the true intent of his actions. Right,
Mm-hmm.
it was only
It's unsustainable.
Well, even the image of it was only sustainable for so long. Like every deception that he has is only sustainable for so long, and I think that that's fundamental to what this episode has to say. You know, I think that there is this idea. The reason that I had mentioned Dostoevsky is because Dostoevsky is. I was reading Crime and Punishment, and you know, one of the core themes of it is that you envision this idea where you get this thing through a sin, and that you can come out the other end and not be damaged to a certain degree by that sin, right? And we have this situation where Oolong he's succeeded, right? Multiple times we see, you know, you go back and how many times he's just walked up and gotten away with this situation, but as he goes along, it damages his character, it weakens him. And so his successes, because he is not on the path per se, his successes work to undermine him rather than build him up to be a better person. His successes destroy him as he goes along.
Which to acknowledge
they worked to make him unhappy. They worked to put him into a place where he cannot experience the world the way that Goku does.
Right, and to acknowledge what's going on in the chat, I think that that's exactly it. Is that the reason that he's not punished by the village is because it was to his own detriment to begin with.
Yeah, I think that's an element of this sort of early Dragon Ball world being different from Z, is that there's this flexible level of balance to it where, you know, it's like, oh, well, you suffered to the level that you made us suffer. Well, you know, that's the balance of the world, and it's this kind of idyllic place. And I keep on coming back to this after I made that sort of analysis that I wrote down, and things operate just slightly differently here. They're not necessarily as
descriptive, as
literal and grounded as Z. And so we have this weird sort of flexibility, and you could interpret it, you know, it's obvious that you could interpret it as being just a stylistic thing, being from, you know, a different era of animation and a different era of a different decade as Z, ultimately. But I think that it is also indicative tonally of what the landscape and the scope and the consequences and ultimately what it has to say about what the themes are of Dragon Ball and how serious they are, but how they're framed towards sort of the younger mind and how the younger mind should interpret these ideas and how important they are to developing the character straight from the bottom up. And so you see a goofiness here earlier in Dragon Ball, you know.
Right, and I mean that's indicative too of the human experience in which that as a child your stakes should not be as weighty as those of when you're an adult, and we'll get into that as we continue the maturation of the show.
And this is definitely a core part of Dragon Ball as well. We're going to come back to this because that idyllic sanctuary paradisal sort of
we're getting
way
layers. We're getting layers and layers. Yeah,
isn't necessarily just the entirety of Dragon Ball. So,
but to close out on this, it is to say that if you act in a way such as Oolong with deceit, arrogance, then what will befall you is ultimately self-destructing. And so it's a lesson for all of us to learn that you cannot shapeshift your way into, let's say, a successive romantic hierarchy.
Right. That ultimately the value is within yourself, and you have to have it to be able to ultimately progress and to be in a state of at least neutral, a sort of a sanctuary state, if not a paradise. But to get out of the negative, to get out of the hell, you need to be in that stasis, and it's pushing towards that, and it's kind of making a commentary on that. I think it's like you need to bring something to the table, man. And I love how based Toriyama is in that sense. He's just like what are you bringing to the table? Like,
what is the substance?
Why does everybody think that they deserve everything from life? And he's kind of attacking a younger generation, and he's saying, like, what makes you think that you deserve this so goddamn much? Like, Goku's out here earning his keep, and he's not complaining at all. Right? He had conquered the only hierarchy he ever knew. He had conquered it before you ever met him. So why do you think that you deserve so much whenever he's doing everything for you? Bulma, right? So we see this, I mean, and it's obvious why the next character that we're dealing with beyond, like, the whole Bulma dynamic is a communist pig, Like, we see Toriyama's mindset in expressing these ideas originally. He's like, it's almost like Toriyama saying, like, let's get one thing straight. This is not how we're thinking in this story. Like, this is the heroic journey, and it's not this. It's not this idea that you deserve something because you didn't earn it. It's not this idea that
you deserve something because you can portray yourself as
it's saying you don't deserve something for your ancestry. You don't deserve something for your gender. You don't deserve something for anything, right? And I love that this salient idea that Toriyama's pushing through, through the show, because it's something that I think younger individuals that find things on a different level of meaning can sort of interpret that in a way that resonates with them in a different way than if you're older and you see it,
Well, we'll definitely talk about...
I had mentioned that earlier, but I think that that's important. I think that Toriyama framed this specifically that way is important.
Right, and we're going to talk about the deserve, not deserve question in the next episode for sure. But no, chat, we are not talking about episode 5 tonight. This one episode... I haven't
seen the clock, but I think it's too late. I didn't expect this much out of Oolong. One
episode, almost before, 2 hours.
We never know where we're going to go with it.
I constantly tell Brok that it's going to take longer than he thinks. He's like, nah, we'll get through it. We better prepare for the next episode. So that's fine. Let's go ahead and close out here. So if you liked what you saw, please subscribe. Please smash the like button.
Just destroy it. Decimate it.
Yes, decimate it. Just to be clear, we won't be streaming again for a number of days, probably until Monday. Probably pick it up back again Monday. Gonna take a little Christmas vacation. We hope everyone enjoyed the show. Do you have any closing words, Brok?
Nothing specific. I think I had a lot of closing words there as we were wrapping the episode
Well,
up.
Not specifically about the episode, but just like signing off for the next 5 or 6 days.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to struggle a lot not to be thinking too much about this. I'm trying to preserve the integrity of coming up with these ideas on the fly, and maybe
it's excellent to engage with them on the fly with each other, because I think that's what creates our content more uniquely than many other formats of the same type.
Right. I'm willing to take on the burden of not knowing what the fuck I'm talking about, because I think that the process is more important than the ultimate goal. So So yeah, I'm gonna struggle with it. I'm not gonna think too much about it. I'm going to count down the days to the next episode of The Expanse, and I'm gonna take it easy. I'm gonna watch these cats, and yeah, try not to think about Dragon Ball, even though this is some of the most engaging media conversation I think I've had in as far as I can remember. This is I did not expect this much to be packed into Dragon Ball to be said. It's one of those things where
I just mentioned to you, hey, Dragon Ball is more than you think.
Well, it's just kind of ridiculous, okay? Because I'm going to quote Chris. Because
Chris? Who's Chris?
Chris is just this person that I know that I had talked to him about our show. And I had mentioned we were going to talk about Oolong. And his perspective was about the same as mine, which is that, like, and I was a bit more optimistic, but he was like, I'm curious to see how much you have to say about Oolong, because you guys sound excited about Oolong. And I said, I know there's a bit there, I can recognize it just because I'm starting to settle into this type of thought, but I'm not sure what's there. And so I'm excited too. I'm not entirely sure.
It's exciting. The next episode is actually always exciting, and I think that's a distinction between.
So I'm glad in a way that it was as intense as it was, as far as like the depth of analysis, because I definitely didn't expect it. I don't know how entertaining it was to listen to, but hopefully it was entertaining.
But we hope you liked it. Smash the like button, subscribe if you like what you hear. I gotta plug our stuff again. So this is the Get the Mic podcast. This was
the mic.
Get it. So this is technically episode 4.
Yeah, I think episode 1 is kind of a non-canonical episode.
I think we're probably just gonna make that.
And you probably won't be able to find it on your feed. So.
Yeah, we're probably just gonna hide it because it contains a lot of stuff that I don't want to say premature ejaculation, but that's exactly what
I would
happened.
just say that it was
there. It is
that it was ill-formed because we tried to rush our analysis.
We blew our load too quickly in episode 1.
Yeah.
So, and we couldn't even cover like nearly half of what we wanted to anyways. So going forward, I think this format is better. We might reorganize the episode numbers, but this was episode 4, Oolong, the kidnapping monster.
The kidnapping monster. So I guess I'll return also at the end and just mention, I think my early statement was that the title screen commented on the monstrous nature of the mode of being that Oolong was going to encapsulate. And so I think that maybe the base Toriyama meme is pretty spot on.
I agree. And that's everything we have to say on this subject. Tune in next time. We will be streaming on Monday. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you next time.